Okay. Thank you. Good morning. Welcome to UNFCCC COP27 side event organized by ESCAP, UNEP, UNFCCC, and UN issue-based coalition on climate ambition in Asia Pacific. The title is Gearing Towards Carbon Neutrality in the Asia Pacific region. Those UN agencies in Asia Pacific have jointly worked on regional review of climate ambition in Asia Pacific, which reveals that the expected emission in 2030 from 2010 level would be 1.5 times higher than global emission. So it's hello? Okay. Sorry, there are multiple technical problems like climate change that we are facing. Considering the technical problem and limited time, without further ado, let me first invite Mr. Kaveh Zahedi, ESCAP Deputy Executive Secretary, to make the opening remarks. Kaveh, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sang-Min. I hope you can hear me and see me okay.
Yes, it's okay.
Wonderful. Well, Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear friends, many of whom are in the room, it really is a great pleasure to welcome you to the side event on gearing towards carbon neutrality in the Asian Pacific region. Of course, a special welcome to all our member states in the room. Sang-Min, I don't know exactly who there is, but I anticipate Cambodia, China, Indonesia, Kazakhstan, and many others, and possibly maybe even the Honorable Senator Rehman from Pakistan, who has been so kind to accompany us on so many of these events during COP. I also hope and understand that my dear friend Ovais, Sarmad, the Deputy at UNFCCC Secretariat, is there. If he is, wonderful, thank you for your time. If he isn't, we forgive him. He must be the second busiest man at the COP. But with that said, dear colleagues, I guess both science and experience have made it very, very clear that our planet is fast approaching tipping points that will make climate chaos irreversible. And in many ways, nowhere do we see that more clearly than here in Asia and the Pacific, including in countries like Pakistan that find themselves on the very front line of the climate crisis. The losses and destruction from climate change are already undermining literally decades of hard-won development gains. At the same time, while our average per capita emissions remain well below the global average, collectively, the 49 countries in Asia and the Pacific are responsible for more than half of global greenhouse gas emissions. And our emission trajectory remains upwards. As Sang-Min mentioned, ESCAP's latest report shows that with the current NDCs from our region, greenhouse gas emissions are projected actually to increase by somewhere like 16% by 2030 compared to 2010 levels, instead of dipping in the way the science has clearly told us. More encouragingly, I guess, our review also shows that almost 40 countries in our region have made carbon neutrality and net zero pledges. This almost doubles the pledges recorded by 2021, by the last COP. And of course, the focus now turns to implementation with the financial and technical support needed, an area where maybe we have seen less progress. With our recent review, we have really tried to capture how climate ambitions have evolved following COP26 and identify some of the accelerators that can take us further. And allow me to just touch on a couple before I hand back to you. First is making sure that carbon neutrality pledges are actually supported by updated and more ambitious NDCs and by long-term low-emission developing strategies with real science-based targets and midterm goals that would make them credible. Good practices for implementing pledges and accelerating a just transition are of course emerging across our region. For example, the climate change bill in Fiji, the long-term carbon neutrality strategy and financing plan in Cambodia, and many others, but clearly more is needed. Second is nature-based solutions. Now, nature-based solutions can bring the region closer to the goal of carbon neutrality by the middle of the century, as well as to help us build resilience. While plans for nature-based solutions already underway in about 37 countries, their mitigation and adaptation benefits need to be much better articulated in the NDCs with specific commitments and time-bound implementation plans, certainly by 2025. And shortly, we're going to hear from our distinguished panelists how they are indeed making some of this happen on the ground. Third and lastly is, of course, unlocking the power of private finance as part of the overall financing package. The past 5 years have seen innovative financial instruments like thematic bonds, climate bonds, green bonds in our region grow around tenfold. This is very encouraging. Private finance is slowly aligning with climate needs, but of course it's not happening at the speed and at the scale needed. And that's why we were really delighted at UNESCAP to work with the UN high-level climate champions and the COP20 presidency to identify a pipeline of climate-aligned investment opportunities from around our region, such as the Living Indus initiative in Pakistan. And we're now going to continue to build on this pipeline with the help of the climate champions and the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero to connect them up with private financiers. Excellencies, distinguished participants, dear friends, this side event today is a joint effort of the issue-based coalition on raising ambitions of climate actions by 15 regional UN entities here in Asia and the Pacific, mostly based with us here in Bangkok. UNESCAP and UNEP have the honor of chairing this group that includes our close partners for today's event, the UNFCCC Secretariat and UNICEF, and I would like to thank both of them again. The issue-based coalitions are really a central part of the UN reforms and the perfect platform for UN-wide support to our member states, including through facilitating South-South exchange. And our issue-based coalition stands absolutely ready to work with you to turn all of the commitments in our region into actions beyond COP27. Let me conclude here. Thank everyone again for joining our event, and both online and in person, and hand back to you, Sangmin. Thank you.
Thank you, Kaveh. With this, let me conclude the opening session, and then let us move on to a substantive session. Before having country presentations, we will have a keynote speech from Her Excellency Minister Rehman, Federal Minister of Climate Change, Pakistan. Thank you for joining us.
Is this the mic you want me to? Right, thank you very much, Excellencies. Good morning. I hope you can hear me because we seem to have a lot of noise overhang from other rooms, a sign of an active COP27. Anyway, without much ado, I want to thank the organizers, UNESCAP, UNFCCC, and others for pulling this together, including the UNEP. I'm told this is about carbon neutrality, of course. Shouldn't everything be? But I'm here to talk about the Living Indus project, which it's a big initiative we have undertaken to start up in Pakistan. As you know, we have come through a very catastrophic series of climate events where 33 million people were impacted, and clearly we are at a point where many still are in need, and that it can include 20 million still in need. And we're going into a winter of extreme vulnerability, without predictability, without livelihoods wiped out, and without a certainty that is needed for rebuilding lives. So other than the exogenous shock that our economy faced and what people actually, who should be at the core of our initiatives, faced, let me say one thing, that this to us is now the age of extreme needed adaptation. And that is where the Asia Pacific should also be looking at. We should be looking at not just mitigation, but also worrying about how we will get our societies, our communities, our countries, and even our entire regions to cope with the onset of an accelerated climate change leading to constant, ongoing, and new predatory climate emergencies on our countries and our communities. Now, we are all living at the edge of extreme vulnerability. My country is one of the 10 most vulnerable countries to climate stress, sometimes number 7, sometimes 8, sometimes 5. And this year felt like we are the ground zero of climate stress. And right now, because nowhere in the world, in living memory, do we know of an event that has impacted 33 million lives. 33 million is the size of 3 medium-sized European countries. And nowhere do we know of entire countries, 1/3 and more of them, inundated by catastrophic flooding that is completely unprecedented in terms of the fact that it was both riverine and monsoon. It was, as the Secretary General called it, a monsoon on steroids. Nothing like we have known to expect or plan for. So clearly we have our work cut out for us, and the Living Indus project is about that great river which feeds, nourishes, and brings forth life. And is in Pakistan, it is home to huge variety of marine habitation, but much more than that, it has sustained our entire civilization for centuries. It is the great jugular vein around which both our economy, livelihoods, and even culture and civilization are centered. So it is the pivot of our economy and also what I call the lifeline of Pakistan. Along this lifeline, ladies and gentlemen, we have designed what we call an axis of adaptation. It is one of the largest carbon sinks in our country also, so it will be able to sequester over 100 million tons of carbon, metric tons of carbon by 2030 if we are on path to the to a living menu of 25 interventions that we have designed for public and private sector investors to build equities in nature-based solutions. And right now we find that the global, what's the problem? The problem is that it is one of the signature projects that both mitigate, that sequester carbon, and adapt to the future, which means that interventions will allow flooding and floodplain planning, which all our economies need to worry about, to be built into the management of the river, its ecosystem, the settlements and livelihoods around it, the land use, and everything else that goes with reimagining a more climate resilient future. Now, when we do that, what stands in our way? I'll tell you what it is, and it's quite simple. This entire COP should be about unlocking private and public financing for huge adaptation and mitigation projects. And here we are seeing, this morning I was reading in the New York Times or somewhere, that $125 trillion are needed to reach net zero by 2050. $125 trillion. I don't even see that kind of money being generated for everybody's favorite war, because wars do generate a lot of cash, right? They immediately mobilize entire countries and coalitions. What we need now is a coalition of the willing to unlock climate finance for governments and countries, and I think entire regions, to manage predictability, resilience, and even mitigation for a future where they can actually survive an accelerated climate tsunami that is coming our way. Why I say accelerated? Because 2030, we're hurtling towards, some people say 2.7 degree world. I think we're hurtling towards a 3-degree world at this point, because this morning I also saw that our biggest, we have a situation where we are still collectively as global emitters emitting more than 2021. So collectively, the entire world's emissions are still on a higher trajectory despite all our planning, our pledges, our ambitions, our NDCs, our reportings, and this large architecture that we've put together to build common ground to save the planet, to save our future. But frankly, this is no longer about saving our future. It is about saving our present. It is about saving the land we stand on and what we expect to build and grow on. So when we build, as we are rebuilding back in Pakistan, we need to rebuild back with a plan that is extremely adaptive and resilient to stresses that are coming without warning. Now, we are putting in early warning systems. The UN Secretary General has talked about an early warning system as a fundamental human right. It's a priority in the next 5 years, according to him, and he's quite right. Early risk, early warning, risk mapping and early warning will save lives. And at the core of all these projects, of the entire COP system, we should not forget are people whose lives are at risk, who still reel from shock in pockets all over the world, and particularly the Asia Pacific is impacted with, rising sea levels and many such calamities. There are many states that will not even survive the decade. They will sink. So we need to find solutions that are not just allowing for just transitions, and we all know what a just transition means, so I won't repeat that. But my country, at the edge of vulnerability, is a postcard to humanity, really, from nature. As the UN Secretary General came, he said this is absolutely a climate carnage of the level he has not seen in his entire life. And the UN OCHA and the UN system should know. They arrive everywhere. We are very grateful for the support for the entire UN system and our development partners. But here's what's holding us back from building back with resilience, saving lives, preventing flooding, and doing all the things, the menu of things that we want to do through this magnificent Living Indus project, which I would have liked to showcase to you in greater detail. But since there's not enough time, I will say that it intervenes in both carbon sequestering, in nature-positive solutions, and some are low cost, some are obviously high cost, because we are trying to revive a river which is the 4th most polluted in the world, and yet it is the lifeline. So it goes from flooding in the north, where we have the highest number of glaciers in the world. They're quite majestic, and all tourists are very invited, but they're invited to be eco-tourists and not litter our famous glaciers that are now melting and creating the kind of flooding downstream. And also the plains of the Indus, which is the delta areas, are bone dry on one side, while the other is completely inundated with water, which will not go away because we're under sea level. You're looking impatient, so I'm about to finish. And so what's the last thing, the last line? The last line is, the whole thing has been costed with our UN partners at $11 to $17 billion. Where are debt-stressed countries already suffering from the loss and damage of $30 billion estimated by the World Bank? This flood has cost us $30 billion. We don't have that kind of money. And so how do we actually go forward with this project? We are told to unlock private finance and public finance internationally. Well, The thing is that the global financial architecture needs to be rewired for giving developing and debt-stressed countries meaningful credit for nature-based solutions, which it does not right now. There are not enough instruments and they are not at scale to change the needle, to even shift the needle on the ground. So for this age of adaptation, as you can see, financing is the key, unlocking it and of course attaching it to governance and key performance indicators, raising bonds, all of that. But to do all of that, we need a global financial structure that responds to crisis and climate vulnerability. With those words, I thank you for your time and patience and look forward to hearing more from you. We will likely be hosting another event here if we can design it, and we'll speak to you more about this then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Her Excellency Minister Sherry Rehman, for your great initiative for connecting adaptation, mitigation, and livelihoods of millions of people, and also this inspiring speech. Certainly the experience of Pakistan really highlights the need for our strength, the solidarity. And then in that connection, the financing is a key to enable those especially countries with a high vulnerability to move on. And with this, let us move on to next session. So we have speakers from China, Kazakhstan, Korea, Cambodia, and Indonesia. So they are going to present national initiative goals for long-term goals and the short-term plans. And without further ado, it is my great pleasure to invite Mr. Liu Cheung, Deputy Director General, National Development and Reform Commission of China.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, good morning. I come from NDRC, China. It's be very honored to be here to introduce the China's policy. First of all, it's a tough year, you know. First of all, I have a PPT, I don't know. Okay. Next. Next page. Next page. Okay. Today I will introduce China's carbon peaking and carbon neutrality policy. First of all, next page, please. Sorry. Next. Okay. First of all, I would like to introduce China's carbon peaking and the carbon neutrality commitments. On October 2020, President Xi Jinping made the announcement. We aim to have carbon emission peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. Reaching peak carbon emission and achieving carbon neutrality will mean a broad and profound systemic social economic transformation. It's not easy for us. Next page. Okay. Secondly, I will introduce NDC. On October 2021, China submitted its updated NDC. First, we aim to have carbon dioxide emission peak before 2030 and achieve carbon neutrality before 2060. Second, to lower carbon emission per unit of GDP by over 65% from the 2005 level. Third, to increase the share of non-fossil fuel in primary energy consumption to around 25%, and to increase the forest stock volume by 6 billion cubic meters from the 2005 level, and to bring its total installed capacity of wind and solar power to over 1.2 billion kilowatts by 2030. By 2030, China will see significant accomplishments from the comprehensive green transformation in economic and social development. Next page. Thirdly, I would like to introduce 1+M policy system of China's carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. Since President Xi Jinping proposed the 1+M policy system in last October, it has become a hot word and has attracted much attention. One refers to the top-level design, including 2 documents. The working guidelines, which issued by the Central Committee of the CPC and the State Council, is the overall planning and deployment in the next 40 years. And the action plan, which issued by the State Council, is the overall deployment of the carbon peaking phase and deploys the 10 action for carbon peaking. Next page, please. I will give you more details about 10 action. First of all, action for green and low carbon energy transition, and energy saving, and industry sector, and urban rural development area, and transportation, and circular economy, and technology innovation, and carbon think, and society. There are 10 actions. 1+N policy system draws a clear timetable and roadmap and construction drawings. Over the last 2 years, we did a lot and make a great progress. Next, please. Ladies and gentlemen, last month, the 20th National Congress of CPC clearly made the deployment of working actively and prudently toward the goals of reaching carbon peaking and carbon neutrality. We will advance initiatives to reach carbon peaking in a well-planned and phased way, in line with the principle of building the new before discarding the old. The theme of COP27 is implementation, and we believe action speaks louder than words. So it's better to act instead of talking about ambition. Let us create a better tomorrow, hands in hand, to do something, not to talk about something. Thank you all. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Liu. Your concise but comprehensive presentation. And with China, I mean, so this is a really encouraging process. I mean, the ambitious goal for 2050, 2030, also the peaking target before 2030, and also the progress made in terms of renewables, which is helping cost down for many developing countries, making renewable energy more affordable. So this could help others accelerate the progress. So with that, let us move on to next speakers from who is president of Korea Environmental Industry and Technology, Dr. Heung Choi, who was also Director General of Climate Change of Ministry of Environment.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'll introduce our effort to reach net zero society in Korea. Next, please. Korea declared the low carbon green growth vision in 28. It was 14 years ago. The vision was aimed to achieve quality growth by innovating technology innovation and also changing our consumption behavior and way of thinking. I'll look back on the outcomes of what we accomplished for the last 14 years. At first, based on the government sponsorship for private sectors, we can get many cutting-edge technologies and we can improve their performance like this. In case of the battery, the performance increases more than 3 times. In case of solar panels, more than 16 times. We can use this kind of technology to deploy renewable energies. Second one is educating young talent and incubating green technology startup companies. We provide graduate programs and also financial support and consulting. We can get many fruitful outcomes from this kind of project. Third one is changing consumption behaviors. We introduced the green card in 2011. We could increase so remarkably, like this. With this one, we can get incentives for your, in case of using public transportation, also purchasing for the green product. Based on this best infrastructure for green growth version 1, we'll do our green growth version 2. I'll introduce a little bit about that one. Former President Moon announced Korea's NDC of 40% reduction from the 2018 level by 2030. It was last year. But it was very challenging for us because we have to reduce annually 4%. So now we are under reviewing how can we accomplish this best way. So, but our new President Yoon, he confirmed that Korea would work toward this target based on science and technology. Under the strategy for carbon neutrality and green growth, we will pursue responsible implementation to low carbon society and the ordinary transition from fossil fuel to renewable and nuclear energy. Also carbon neutrality and green growth based on science and technology. We also scale up our green ODA to help developing countries transition and share our innovative green technologies with the entire humanity. We select 100 core technologies to be developed and deployed. Let me introduce a little bit more in detail. Most important one thing is green consumption and investment. But we are worried on green washing. We will expand our green product and create more green consumer culture through like this kind of green investment and watching green washings. Second, we support the next generations, including startups, for the youth future leaders. We need to play more proactive role, both international and the central government to promote this kind of actions. As always been, most important one is technology innovation. Also, the international cooperation within or among countries. Let's suppose we Korea, we have many high technologies such as solar and wind. If we provide those technologies to some Asia Pacific countries, then they produce renewable energies, then they turn to hydrogen. Then they can export, we can import the one. I compare to start. Thank you.
Thank you. Seems that managing this type of side event is like really managing climate change. Of course, climate change challenge is much bigger, but it's not easy to manage the situation well. But let me invite all the panelists to have a seat here because we don't have any more PPT presentation. So all the panelists, could you please have a seat? And those ladies and gentlemen who is leaving, there are more exciting stories to share. You may. Okay. Thank you. So now our next speaker will be from Indonesia, who is Ibu Laksmi, Director General of Climate Change Control, Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Ibu Laksmi, yeah, please. Yes.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. A very good morning. And thank you for having me for these important discussions. So it is my pleasure to inform you in these sessions that with regard to the climate change agenda, Indonesia has submitted the, just recently enhanced our ambitions by submitting our enhanced NDC last month. Indonesia has increased its NDC ambition in our enhanced NDC from 29% to 31.89% with or for the unconditional scenario. And we increased from 41% to 43.2% conditionally against the business as usual of 2,800 megaton CO2 equivalent. The biggest contributor for our enhanced NDC is from the follow sector from 5 megaton CO2 equivalent or almost 17.4%. And the second contributor is from the energy for about 12.5%. Of course, this target is not yet aligned with the 1.5 degrees Celsius scenario. However, last year, Indonesia has submitted its long-term strategy for low carbon and climate resilience 2050. And within this long-term strategy, Indonesia has pronounced or proposed the scenario, the most ambitious scenario, which is the scenario of low carbon compatible with Paris Agreement. So we are expect to have the net zero emission by 2060 or sooner. And in enhanced NDC, we plan to have the net sink in the follow sector by 2030, because we target of minus 15 million ton CO2 equivalent for the peatland water management activities as part of our follow net sink 2030 policy. So, and thank you for the organizer for putting forward a question, important question. So I would like to refer to the questions. Question on the challenging and the opportunities. For Indonesia, as I mentioned before, follow and energy are two main contributors to achieving the enhanced NDC. and the net zero emissions target, with the level of energy is 87 million ton and Volu is minus 326 million ton CO2 equivalent. It's a huge number, but we are confident to achieve the goals. We have so much opportunities. For example, we are now developing and implementing a new and renewable energy policies to provide more accessible and affordable energy for our people. In Volu, as I mentioned, Volu Netting 2030 is a strategic operational plan to reduce the deforestation and forest degradation to improve the carbon and non-carbon benefit. Last year, we able to reduce quite significantly rate of the deforestation, which is the biggest so far from Indonesia. So the challenges that we are having so far is, of course, regarding the modalities or support for the implementation, including the technology and the finance. With regard to the finance, Indonesia has a strategy to increase or to ensure that there is finance to mobilize. One, we have 4 strategies. The first strategy, of course, to strengthen our fiscal policy by having climate budget tagging since 4 years ago. Second strategy is to develop a set of innovative instruments or financial instruments. We already have the green bond, Islamic green bond, or green sukuk, the first ever Islamic green bond for environment. We already established our Indonesia Environment Fund to be able to mobilize resources for our agenda. And we also greater or open and more access to all other sources, including the global sources. So with regard to the questions on how to scale up the decarbonization in Indonesia, so scaling up the decarbonization in energy transition in Indonesia, it's cover the involvement of private sector, local government, and of course, off-grid renewable energy and energy efficiency. In the Volu sector, the role of non-party stakeholders as subnational and private sector is also important. Indonesia has carried out many programs, including the social forestry, and we call it village climate program, to engage all the stakeholders to be participated in our climate actions. Youth, as one of the vulnerable groups, it's also very important role. We engage youth in many programs, including the Climate Village program, the Green School program, and in fact, now here in Sharm el-Sheikh, we bring I think almost 20 delegations of youth to be participate in this event. So Indonesia would like to share in this context quite numbers of best practices. So I do invite you to come to the Indonesian Pavilion because we have a series of very interesting sessions with regard to our best practices in Indonesia. So for Indonesia, committing to the climate change, it's not only putting into the document, but to make sure that it is implemented, and we will ready to lead by examples. I thank you.
Thank you, Ibu Laksmi, for your comprehensive introduction. So considering Indonesia's distinctive feature, where more than 50% of GHG emission comes from forestry and land use change, highlighting this nature-based solution is really important, and also financing, also highlighting the domestic resource mobilization through fiscal policy reform, and also the last point about multi-stakeholder participation, including Climate Village program. Thank you for your brief and comprehensive introduction. And then our next speaker is from Cambodia, Mr. Somthi, Deputy Director General, Policy and Strategy, Minister of Environment. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It is my honor to be here in the side event COP27 side event on raising ambitions on climate action in Asia Pacific. Cambodia is a very small contributor to the climate change. And Cambodia, based on our greenhouse gas inventories 2016, we estimate that we have contributed around 0.3 of global emissions. So we have also managed our forestry, well managed, is about 40% of total land areas. However, we think that to meet our long-term development goals, we cannot achieve without shifting to resilient and sustainable model. Cambodia doing more than its share to support global climate actions. We are implementing the updated nationally determined contributions that has just submitted in 2020, and we have committed 42% emission reductions compared to business as usual. It is conditional to external financial support. And in December 2021, we have submitted our long-term strategy for carbon neutralities, and our target is up to 2050. Our long-term strategies cover a broad range of sectors, from energy sector, from transportation, forestry and land use, agriculture, waste management, industrial process in product use. In energy sector, we see increasing renewable energy investment. This including solar power and also hydropower. This also contribute to our more resilient and low carbon energy sector in Cambodia. We are working several mechanisms to better recognize the role of forestry in global climate actions. Ministry of Environment is developing a mechanism of payment for ecosystem-based adaptation, and we are see forests play important role, especially in nature-based solutions. I think the time is really limited from our organizer, so I would like to end this. But before we end, I would like to mention that Cambodia is willing to participate, especially to strengthen the partnership with international organizations and also private sector for enhanced climate action. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sum. As he highlighted, despite a very small contribution of Cambodia to global GHG emission, so Cambodia is one of 4 ASEAN countries that developed long-term emission development strategy, which is a very concise, very comprehensive, well elaborated, all the actions in those 5 or 6 sectors. And also, your point on the readiness to really strengthen its international cooperation. Also, UNESCAP is really looking forward to working with Cambodia. And then with that, so we conclude presentations from our country speakers. And then we have 2 young youth speakers who have also very solid experience in climate action. So first, let me invite Ms. Alice Ho, Chief Youth Office, Global Alliance of University on Climate. So she will be really highlighting the role of a young scientist.
Hello. Yes, thank you very much. Hi, I'm Alice. I'm the Chief Youth Officer for the Global Alliance of Universities on Climate. And the The alliance is called GAUK, is established in 2019 with a joint statement on climate change made in Davos at the World Economic Forum. Among its key objectives, GAUK will facilitate greater levels of collaboration on climate change, climate issues, greater engagement with climate stakeholders, and the promotion of environmental practices by universities. We have 15 prestigious member universities from 9 countries and 6 continents, such as MIT, where I'm from, Tsinghua University, Yale, Cambridge, Oxford, Tokyo, all over the world. And in the past year, we have launched the Climatex campaign in effort to nurture future youth leaders. And I would like to tell you why it is such important to involve the youth. And the first answer is the youth has strong motivation and is building fresh knowledge in universities that will be valuable in the transition. And indeed, more new interesting skills is also necessary that we are all involved. We are very concerned by the future climate crisis as we suffer bigger consequences than what we have ever experienced now. And we don't want to be passive facing it. And therefore, youth will be the leaders tomorrow, and we need to be starting now. We're tackling it in 3 different levels: regional, national, and international. We've started with the Climatex Leadership Training Pilot with 100 global youth ambassadors and having the opportunity to learn more about climate with the synergy of food, nature biodiversity, adaptation and resilience, secure sustainable energy, and finance topics. With the basic knowledge on academic and leadership skills, they've been on African Regional Forum on Climate, World Youth Development Forum with hands-on skills, and curate 10 successful events on the Global Youth Summit on Net Zero Future. However, this is not enough. We believe that there should be ways to bring them all together, and therefore we've proposed the Global Youth Climate Week, which is last week, with 100 co-initiators all over the world. It was very successful, and we've brought everything together to COP yesterday to have had the GOG Day with 7 events and a high-level events with Chinese Envoy Minister Xie Zhenhua and the UNEP Ms. Ainur Anderson and Shirsa Jolopo from the French Minister. And thank you so much. Please keep posted with GAUK.
Thank you. Considering our urgent need for developing a cutting-edge technology and interdisciplinary study, so we are really looking forward to having our also partnership. I mean, you are doing a great job, but also partnership with this global alliance with the UN agencies. And then last but not least, our speaker from Palau, who is a youth negotiator, Ms. Ivory Fogut.
Ali, and good morning. I'm Ivory. I'm from the Republic of Palau. For those of you who don't know, Palau is an island nation. It's the westernmost Pacific island nation. And we have an exclusive economic zone, the area the size of France. So we're a small nation, but we're a large ocean state, we like to say. So thank you for the organizers for having me on this panel. I wanted to start by sharing that the Asia-Pacific region has a majority of the world's youth. Did you guys know we have 60% of the world's youth? That's a lot of youth, and that translates to 750 million young people, the ages 15 to 24 years old. As a generation, we're committed to taking climate action, and the reason for that is because we wake up every day of our lives. Every day that we've been growing up, we've been facing the world's biggest issue, which is climate change. So for me personally, as an islander youth, this climate crisis is also an existential crisis. Because right now we're facing the loss of our culture and language due to globalization and colonization. But in addition to that, now we're facing the loss of our lands due to sea level rise. Loss of land is loss of heritage, and in turn, loss of our identities as a people. At the same time, I'm inspired by leaders in the Pacific, specifically like the Republic of the Marshall Islands, which has actually set the 1.5 degree target, if you don't know. And in Palau specifically, we have taken very ambitious commitments. So for example, we've committed to achieving 45% reduction in renewable energies by 2025, and we're committed to going 100% renewable by 2032. So this is much sooner than the targets that are set, I think, by some of our neighbors, and I encourage our other nation neighbors to also do the same. So I'm very pleased this year that we also have our very first youth pavilion. If you guys haven't checked it out, it's across the way. And I also wanted to share that I think in the Pacific, we really look forward to opportunities of incorporating more marine renewable energy types of technologies like tidal, wave, and ocean thermal energies to help our path towards decarbonization. And we look forward to partnering with other neighbors. To close, I would like to say that as young experts and professionals, youth are here today to be part of the solution. So what we need is to be part of our delegations as negotiators. We also need to be part of projects, decarbonization projects, nature-based solution projects as technical experts. And lastly, we need to be part of our governments as policymakers and leaders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ivory. So our regional review also highlights the role of youth and children. So I wish to invite you to look at our report. In that context also, we have invited you to be panelists. And then with that, let me invite Ms. Dechan Chering, who is a regional director and representative, UNEP Asia and the Pacific Office, for her concluding remarks.
Thank you very much, Sangmin. Excellencies, distinguished participants, colleagues, dear friends. You've already heard that nowhere is action more apparent, the urgency, than in our region in Asia Pacific. You've heard about, the climate-induced disasters. Today, you've heard rich deliberation from our keynote speakers as well as panelists. And if I may take the opportunity to quickly highlight a few key points. Minister Rehman highlighted the need to invest in nature-based climate solutions, and she talked about the living Indus, distinctive ecosystems and carbon sequestration potential, tackling pollution, floodplain planning, livelihoods, land use. But she talked about reimagining a climate-resilient future. Minister Rehman highlighted the need for a coalition of the willing to unlock public and private climate finance. She said this must manage predictability, resilience, mitigation to the adverse impacts of climate change. So we need to unlock, scale up, and innovate financial instruments tailored to country-specific conditions. We've also looked at debt for climate swaps, climate bonds, to mobilize funds from carbon markets, emission trading schemes. Mr. Liu Cheung gave really concrete examples on aligning nationally determined contributions with long-term low-emission climate resilient strategies. Ibu Laksmi talked about including forest and land use net sinks, and Sumthi and Ivory also both gave us concrete examples. Many panelists highlighted the need to develop, implement decarbonization sectoral pathways. And here the focus was primarily on energy, but Mr. Choi talked about new forms of technology, innovation, and green investment. And Alice highlighted how young people are leading the charge as leaders through the University Alliance, championing urgency, faster action, greater ambition. And we had Ivory focus on we need youth in the implementation of climate action policies, programs, and decisions. And as Ivory said, please do check the Youth Pavilion. So on behalf of the Asia-Pacific Issue-Based Coalition and its participating UN agencies on raising ambition on climate action in Asia-Pacific, I would like to thank all our keynote speakers, panelists for your participation today. And I want to thank UNESCAP, UNEP, UNICEF, and UNFCCC for their hard work in organizing this event. I thank you.
Thank you, Dechan, for your nice summary. With this, we conclude the side event. Thank you very much for your participation and contribution.